things a lot of times. Can you believe it's 50 years? I get that a lot. Did you think the song would grow in importance over the years? And I get asked that a lot. But I know a lot of people in publishing, and basically a lot of songs get written and they fade away, even though they might be hit records. But then there are other songs, there are a lot of iconic songs, like some of Dylan's songs and the Beatles, of course, and these groups that last, and they have a momentum, and that's what publishers like. So that's the reason I've always been treated well by Universal, because they like my songs that I wrote. And but I'll say that what you see from the movie really is it took 10 years to write this song. It was 10 years from the time Buddy Holly died to that time when I spoke to Phil Everly. I was involved with Pete Seeger, and I was around a lot of very creative people, people in science who were environmentalists, people who were songwriters, guys who came from here and there, wrote one or two songs, and they would end up on shows. So everybody was creating all the time. It was a challenge. In addition, there was a world of wonderful artists out there that were doing their very best work in 1969 and 1970. So I was trying to break in. I said, man, I got to be good, and I got to do the best I can do. It's so easy to throw a record away, to go in the studio and settle for something. And this was the problem with Ed Freeman. We worked very well together, but he was wrong about one thing in the movie, and that was that I was a rock and roll singer in my head, and I had always been, and I knew rock and roll, and Ed really didn't. He was he was actually quite a lover of Gregorian music, church music. He's magnificent at these things, and beautiful and sensitive. This is why Vincent is such a beautiful record, because of Ed. But he knew how to rock and roll too when he had to. That's the reason.
Paul Griffin really blew me.
Yeah, but that's the thing. He would do that. He would scour the city for players. Roy Markowitz was like a Broadway player, and he had a feel. He liked what he did, and he brought him in. So I didn't know anything about that stuff. He would find these players. So that was, I was very lucky I found him. I was, because there were a lot of producers who would just yes you to death and do something, and it would be garbage. It would be a failure.
Yeah.
But each album that I made, I worked with people. And Ed and I did a third album called Don McLean, and it had a song called Dreidel on it, and a song called If We Try, and it was the follow-up to American Pie. It was a disaster, and Ed took the complete blame for it. He's doing a lot of drugs, and he said so. And at that point, I wanted to kill him, and he wanted to kill me too. But we still made another record, Playing Favorites. After that, I couldn't believe that I couldn't get what I wanted out of him again. You know what I mean? But we just didn't. It didn't happen because but at the same time, the Don McLean album is still something that some of these people like a lot. They talk about it. It has Bronco Bill's Lament, If We Try, a bunch of songs on there.
The one thing when we interviewed Ed for the film, even though this is like 50 years plus, he still pays homage to the purity of who Don was. He had his point of view as to how to decorate the song, but the essence of the song, he got it. And so for him to show up last year and to talk.
And Ed also was a superior musician to myself. He knew, to read music and
but you played
do these
guitar,
things.
right? You played guitar.
Oh, you bet I play guitar all over that record. That's one thing I almost killed him over.
Really?
Was that, because this is a solo version of me and the guitar on Vincent with some of the strings at the end, gorgeous strings, vibes in the middle,
Sure.
Mike Minieri, I remember. But there's not a lot on this record. You know, we broke it down for a BBC show, and it's like five guys, you know.
Yeah.
But it's the way Ed mixed the record and EQ'd the sounds. And some people don't know this, but the actual version of American Pie on the album goes from mono to stereo.
No, I didn't know that.
So it expands on your speakers. If you're listening to speakers, you know, it'll sound mono, and then it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger as it goes along. So that was Ed's idea, and it worked very well. He was terrific. He really was, and it was sometimes you have to have tension, you know, between people. You can't just be smooth going, you know.
One thing I tell you, for all of you out there who don't know, working with Don is real interesting. He will tell you if he doesn't dig it. If he doesn't dig it, there's no way it's going to move forward. But if he does, he's as good a partner as can get. Because if you get it right, you get it right. And I think probably what happened with Ed is he knew that you had it intrinsically, and some of what he wanted to do you didn't want, but he ultimately you
Well, I chose Ed.
Yeah.
Ed didn't like me. He said so in the movie.
Yeah.
I didn't think he had much talent. I didn't like his songs.
But then when he got into it, he kind of.
You see, that's hard when you're working with a guy who doesn't particularly like you. You know, even though I chose him because I liked what he did. You know, and then as we went along, he didn't like my attitude either because I wasn't going along with a lot of the things that he wanted to do. But eventually, he saw I knew where else to go, and we began to work together a lot better. It worked out great, but you know, it is amazing. That's the thing they say. How did it last? Do you think it would last 50 years? And I want to just say to these folks here, I don't know what their relationship is with you, but you are the reason this happened. You're the reason the movie happened. You're the reason this children's book and this series will happen. You are the reason that we will do a Broadway show at some point.
We will.
And so you've worked very hard in these last 2 years, and you've been we've had a lot of unforeseen difficulties, which we've overcome.
We're going to continue to overcome them because the essence of it is, it's on the screen, it's in his heart, and it's in your ears. So whoever challenges it, they're on drugs.
So anyway, I'm gonna go sit down.
Well, do any of you have anything you want to ask him while you got him here? Most of you know him, but
actually, a quick question.
Sure.
I'm wondering what it's like.
Stand up and.
Oh, I'll stand up. Sure. Okay, that's weird. I'm wondering what it's like to make a massive song.
What did he say?
What's it like to make a massive?
But then also record after that. Is it daunting at all to make such a hit and then have to record another record?
Okay, so what he said is, when you knew you got it, and it was the big one, how did it feel doing anything after that? After you knew you had the big one? Meaning, album number 2, number 3, did you ever think you could do something as big a deal as American Pie?
Well, that was the problem because, you know, I knew I couldn't. Because nobody else could either. See, that's the thing. It'd be one thing if you had a hit record and you didn't have another hit record. I've had other hit records, but I knew I couldn't do anything like that again, and I knew that nobody else could either. So that's been my saving grace, is the fact that no one else could.
That's true.
You know, I mean, let's see you do it, you know. But it's, you know, it's been amazing. I've had this career going all over the world, dozens of tours around the world, people telling me, so I could tell you 100 stories about songs of mine that have changed people's lives, done beautiful stories that, you know, make me so happy that I did this with my life.
Yeah.
And, you know, as I say, you see the problem at home with my parents and my father and what he wanted, and he was quite authoritative in those areas. And it was hard, but after he passed away, I just dropped right out, you know. And I have a cousin who's my father's brother, was very much like him, and Don McLean. And Don McLean was James Taylor's road manager for a lot of years, and then he became an important VP at Columbia Records, and then he was at Showtime doing major boxing matches with Mike Tyson and all these people. And Tyson used to call him from jail, you know, to get a fight for him. So his father didn't talk to him for 8 years because he didn't go into the area that he wanted him to. That's the way the McLeans were. And they don't have people like that much around anymore. I mean, most everybody's very supportive and touchy-feely and all. That was not our household. It's my way or the highway.
So, okay, yeah, Al.
So Don, so Vincent was also on American Pie.
Vincent was also on American Pie. Alan is one of the leaders of the Manhattan Transfer, which is a pretty big band in your era and still. So what do you want to know about Vincent?
Well, I mean, there was so much involved with writing American Pie, right? So how did Vincent fit into that?
How did
write that?
Vincent fit into your headspace after American Pie?
Well, I'll try anything. And when you do that, if you have a success, then it's not going to be like anybody else's. But a lot of times you're going to fail because you're not doing something that is a repetition of what you did that was successful. If I had been commercially minded, and I'm not, I would have done versions of American Pie, you know, or I would have done a version of And I Love You So or Castles in the Air. I would have stayed within a small range, but I went all over the place. And all you have to do is listen to my albums and you can see that. In fact, started recording other people's music, and ended up having a #1 record with the Roy Orbison song Crying, which completely transformed my career in the 1980s, in the early 80s, because once again it hooked me up with another major rock and roll person, and it opened the door for his return to the place where he should have been all along, almost like I did with Buddy Holly and American Pie. But people pushed it back against me. You know, what do you want to sing other people's songs for? Because I'm a singer, because I can do it. That's why. You're always having to but I was very lucky, you know, with a lot of people, if they fight, they lose. I fought and I won because I convinced people or did something that surprised them. But I mean, 1981, when I had a bunch of hits with Castles in the Air, the remake, and Crying, and Since I Don't Have You was also on the charts, surprised everybody because most of these singer-songwriters were history.
Yep.
At that point, disco was really strong. So to come with that ballad and having a worldwide 3 #1s around the world, Vincent, American Pie, and Crying, and they cemented my world tour.
I kind of think that the reason that the Orbison song, which was such a classic, was a hit for Don, in my opinion, is because that was a great song. Don's known as a great writer, and if you can interpret a great song and be a great writer, you got to be, and it comes off. How could it not be a hit? And especially if it was marketed and promoted. But the purity of it was a great song. You've written great songs.
Yeah, but it was a long story. I can't tell it here.
Well, anyway,
A lot of
I don't know.
accidents happen.
I'm just a fan.
But
But
you coming into my life is another one of these kind of accidents because I don't.
that guy's
I
fault.
mean,
Where is he? Ray introduced me to Kurt.
Okay. Well, anyway, you know, Kurt and I found out about you, and then you started to come up with all these ideas, and we agreed. It took us throughout the whole pandemic. We were working on these contracts and getting stuff done, and now these things are happening.
Yep.
And so these things take time, and you followed through on everything. I really appreciate it. And I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was excellent. It wasn't the same movie that I saw before, but it was much better, I thought.
Good.
Moved along much
You're
better.
happy.
Yeah, I am. It moved along very nicely.
And you like where American Boys is.
What's that?
American Boys, where we finally put it.
American Boys?
Yeah, your new song.
Was that in the movie?
Yep. Yeah. Anyway,
I missed it.
Don wrote a new song called American
Oh, yeah.
Boys. And when we went back into the surf ballroom and we looked at all these guys that are icons of American music, we thought that punctuating that, at least I did, I had a little fight with the director, but it went in where it should have been, and I think it's fantastic. So,
Well, anyway, I'm still making music and coming
He
out with a
still
new
is.
album, and we're gonna do things together.
you bet.
Thank you very much.
And Vincent's in the other. Thank you all for coming. Sunday night, it's not even 10 o'clock, so Henry, you can go back to the office in the morning, or not. Thank you all very much.
Thank